Hello, welcome to History 1301. This is U.S. history up to 1877. My name is Alfonso R. Lopez, and I will be your instructor for this class this semester. Now, what we're going to be doing in this video recording is to introduce the students to the course, to the class, and explain quite thoroughly how the class is going to be structured, what are going to be the main requirements in terms of textbooks, in terms of assignments and exams, opportunities for extra credits. We're going to be talking about that as well. The mode of learning, how you're going to be learning the material for this course, how to prepare for the exams, and also the grading distribution. What are the main grades, the main components for this course, and ultimately how I grade at the end of the semester. Okay, so everything you need to know to not only pass this class, but to excel will be explained here. So I highly recommend that you watch this video presentation as thoroughly as possible, and maybe take notes. Why not? Due to the fact that, again, there will be critical information presented here. Of course, if you have any questions regarding this presentation, this introduction, please let me know and I will respond to your questions promptly. Okay, so let us now go to the main page in Blackboard, because this course is offered through the Blackboard platform. So let us transition there. And when you open the main Blackboard page, this is what you're going to see. It takes you to the announcements page. So far, there's been only one announcement posted, something I sent yesterday, Sunday, indicating that there will be a class introduction presentation posted today. So as soon as this video is ready, I will let you know. I will post another announcement indicating that it's ready to be viewed. And once again, consider this as the very first day of class. This is like the syllabus day, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this session. If you look at the left-hand column in Blackboard, there's a series of links. Those are the most important links for this course. They're presented there. So at the very top, it says syllabus. When you click on it, it takes you to the syllabus page. Now you can download the file if you want to keep it handy in your computer and so on. That's fine. Or you can just read it, because I made sure that the syllabus will be so accessible for all students to see that, just with one click, you will be able to read the entire document. And it is a very important document, by the way. Most questions that students present during the semester, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, those questions are answered in the syllabus. So let's go over the syllabus here, and let's start from the very top. Again, this is History 1301. Now, I'm offering 3 sections of this course. It's a 12-week course. One is 161, the other one is 172, and the other one is 173. So if you're enrolled in any of those 3 sections, you're in the right course. Okay, it's exactly the same course. It's just 3 sections of that. Okay, all right. So it is a 12-week course. It starts today, Monday, the 23rd. And it ends in December 15th. And this is the first part of U.S. history that goes all the way to 1877. I will talk more about the actual content, what we're going to be covering in this course in just a few moments. Once again, my name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I'll be your instructor for this class this semester. And the easiest and fastest way to reach me is via email. Okay, my email is posted there. As you can see, I'm checking my email several times a day. So Monday through Friday, you'll be receiving a response within a 24-hour period. During the weekends, however, I might take 48 hours. So if you, let me just say, send it Saturday. If you send an email on Saturday, I might or might not respond within a 24-hour period, but for sure, Monday morning, you'll be receiving a response. So all emails sent to me during the weekend are addressed Monday morning. Okay. All right. So this is an asynchronous online class. So there will be no scheduled meetings of any kind. Something that I will reiterate in just a few seconds here. But before we move into that section, concerning email communication, I just wanted to point out here and stress that according to ACC policy, all communication between faculty and students have to take place within the ACC supplied system. So what that means is that if you send me an email from your private email account, I'm not going to reply to it. So just make sure that you are writing your messages using your ACC email account. Okay. All right. Now, there's one requirement in terms of textbooks, and that is that we are going to use a textbook titled Reading American Horizons, Primary Sources for U.S. History in a Global Context, Volume 1. So this is the only required text for this course. Please make sure you get the 4th edition, and I put that in bold letters, again, the 4th edition, because this textbook will be used for completing a course assignment that is due at the end of the semester. Okay, so now, having said that, what this means is that this textbook is not a conventional standard textbook. You know, the ones you usually get in other history classes where you follow along the lectures and there's a narrative of historical events that you're reading from cover to cover. This textbook is actually a collection of documents or historical documents or primary sources that are designed to give the student direct access to the thoughts and feelings and views and opinions of historical actors that really shaped U.S. history. Okay, so instead of reading a book that a historian wrote about historical actors, you're actually tapping directly into their thoughts and their voices, in other words, okay, with no filter. And so it is really, once again, just a collection of documents, and those are not necessarily the entire document. More than likely, you're going to get just an excerpt of those documents, just a small portion of that for you to read. And I've selected about 10 of those documents for you to read and answer some questions on that. Again, that is the main course assignment that is due at the end of the semester. Again, I will talk more about that towards the end of this presentation once we get into that section of the course assignment. But this is the only financial investment you're going to be making in this course. It's just one textbook, and it's a thin booklet, actually, which is really the companion to the actual textbook that we're not going to use. We're only using the companion. Again, it's a reader, in other words, and is I believe it's about $25, maybe $28 new. You might buy it from an online vendor used for much less than that, probably half the price. So once again, it's a very, very affordable textbook. Just make sure you get the 4th edition, and also if you're going to buy it from the ACC bookstore, there are two things that you have to keep in mind. One is that the Highland campus bookstore is the one that carries this textbook, okay, the Highland campus. And number two is that they have a policy of returning unsold copies at midpoint of the course. In other words, if you decide not to buy this book and wait until, let it just say, November, you might not get it at the ACC bookstore, because by November, the bookstore assumes that students who did not buy the book by then, they bought it from somewhere, some other vendor, some other online store. So they start returning all of those unsold copies back to the publisher. Okay. So if I were you, I would try to buy this book as soon as possible, even though this assignment is not due until early December, the first week of December. Nonetheless, please just make sure to get a hold of this book. That way you have plenty of time to read the documents and work on them again slowly across the 12-week process. Okay. All right. So now, as I mentioned, this is an online asynchronous course. So it will be delivered fully online, and it will not consist of hybrid components, meaning we're not going to be meeting in campus, or we're not going to hold virtual sessions of any kind. It's totally a course that is already presented to you. It's already uploaded on Blackboard, and your responsibility is to review the material in your own schedule. Okay, so you can tailor your schedule according to your own responsibilities, according to your own work and family duties, and so on. Okay, so now the method of instruction, maybe if you already browse through the page, is that I've recorded all of my lectures. And the lectures are already posted on Blackboard. Again, there's a section called Course Content, and there's a link titled Instructional Materials. And it is in that link, Instructional Material, where you'll find all the instruction, particularly the folder titled Recorded Video Lectures. So the recorded video lectures is everything that you need, again, in terms of instruction. And it's already available on Blackboard. I will talk more about that once we get into that section, the mode of learning, but just be reminded that this is how you're going to be learning the material, okay, for this class. I know that every instructor that offers an online course presents different formats, different instructional materials, maybe some readings and articles and books and chapters that students have to read, and then they're tested on that. But here it is really a virtual class, a lecture, in other words, very similar, if not identical, to the ones that I provide in campus face-to-face. Okay? All right. So before we move into the mode of learning, and I explain about the video lectures and so on, it is also important to understand what we're going to cover. Okay? What is the course content or this course description? Okay, so this is the first half of U.S. history that ventures from the very early origins of the United States, going back to the American continent itself, and we're going to be looking at the original inhabitants of America. Those are the indigenous peoples, the Native Americans, as they're called. We're going to take a glance at that again and see history from that point of departure all the way to 1877 and cover everything in between. So what I've done is that I've divided the first part of U.S. history, this very long period of time. I mean, if you really want to compare 1301 and 1302, I mean, 1301 covers a lot of ground in terms of time period. You know, there's not only centuries, but eventually thousands of years of history, due to the fact that we have to look at the Native Americans, we have to look at Europe, and so on and so forth. So the first part of U.S. history, I've divided that long period of time into three main historical eras or historical periods. The first historical period, I call it from the ancient world all the way to the age of discovery. Okay, so that means we're really taking a glance at the foundational origins of the United States. And here we look at, for example, the Native American world. We look at the origins of the Native Americans, where they come from, and so on, and what kind of cultures and societies and eventually high-level civilizations flourished in America before the arrival of Columbus in 1492. So this is where we start. In almost every history book of U.S. history starts there. Okay, just trying to understand that context. Then we shift gears and look at the European background, because the United States is going to be, as we'll see, a composite of different civilizations coming together, encountering one another, and pretty much blending many of their cultural values and ideas into a mix, so to speak. And so we have to look at the European background. And here we're going to look at the mother cultures of Europe. Very briefly, we're going to look at the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, and their role in initiating civilization in Europe. Okay, what were the main components, the main ideas of the Greeks and the Romans that provided the blueprint for civilized life in Europe? And of course, the Greeks started that process very early on in 800 BC, and the Romans kind of much later took on that project, that mission as well, of creating a civilization and acquiring a lot of elements from the Greeks and expanding those elements across Europe. So they build an empire. We look at the formation of the Roman Empire. Eventually, we look at the collapse and the age of feudalism, called the Middle Ages as well, or the Dark Ages. All of this is important because we're understanding the background of Europe before the arrival of Columbus, where Columbus was actually coming from. And one of the key components of the European background is the age of discovery, how around the 12 and 1300s Europe was initiating a new era called the Age of Discovery. And this era was largely propelled by the rise of long-distance trade. Okay, it's called international trade. So we see the rise of global trade networks connecting Europe, the Middle East, and Asia with North Africa, eventually West Africa. And during this period of time, the Europeans wanted to accelerate the pace of trade. They entered a technological revolution in navigation, creating a fleet system, the Portuguese, for example, in order to start exploring the world around them. The age of exploration begins, and they wanted to find a trade route to Asia to tap into the spices and the silks. And that led, of course, Christopher Columbus to try a new route, sailing westward, believing he was going to arrive to the Far East, and instead he stumbled upon a new landmass, the American continent. And that, again, initiates the age of discovery and the age of encounters. The encounters of all of the civilizations of the world begins around that time. And America is now integrated into the rising international trading system. Okay, it becomes part of it. And of course, this really explains also the rise of Europe to world power as well. The discovery of America by Europeans and the colonization of America by Europeans ensured that Europe was going to be the beneficiary of all of the mineral wealth and resources of the American continent. And this is going to generate significant change in Europe. Okay, the transformation of kingdoms into trading empires was one of that change. The rise of the merchant class and trading companies as well. International trading companies. We see the use of gold as currency. The beginning of silver as currency in Europe as well. So there's a monetary revolution underway, and this is going to provide the blueprint for the rise of capitalism eventually. Again, so there is significant changes taking place with the discovery of America. And of course, the colonization of America was also a process undertaken not only by the monarchs sending people over to America, but also trading companies as well. Okay, so there's an economic component involved here. Now, there's also a religious component in that another force pushing Europeans out of Europe to come into the New World, America, and settle it was religion. And this course is also going to look at religion as well, meaning that we're going to be exploring, for example, the Christian background of Europe, the origins of Christianity, how Christianity entered very early on in Europe, and became the official religion of the Roman Empire. And after the collapse of the Roman Empire, Christianity remained standing with the Christian Church in Rome. And they had this mission to spread Christianity across Europe. And virtually every land where the Europeans were going to move into. So that meant that when the Europeans were moving out of Europe in their trading operations, they also were attempting to expand Christianity as well along the networks as well. And with the discovery of America, likewise, the Europeans arriving to the New World were also arriving not only to engage in trading activities and operations, but also to bring in missionaries to try to convert the indigenous populations of the New World to Christianity. So we look at that process, of course, and also the reasons why North America, in this case, we're looking at the British colonies, particularly New England, for example, in the northeastern part of North America, was colonized by a series of religious groups that were really being persecuted in Europe for their different interpretations of the Christian doctrine. You know, those were known as the Protestants, people that separated from the Church of Rome, were persecuted, and they wanted to find refuge, a safe haven, so to speak, in the New World, and they came to settle and establish a series of colonies. So we're also going to look at that as well, okay? Now, in the second historical period, we're moving into the colonial period itself. Okay, so the second historical era of this first part of U.S. history look at the colonial era. Okay, from, let us just say, 1607 all the way to the end of the colonial period. That was really the end of the American Revolution, 1783. And in that period, we're going to look very closely at really the formation, development, shaping of colonial culture and society. Okay, so I picked three main issues or topics that are critical for understanding the formation of colonial America. And that is, number one, the slave trade. Okay, the fact is that the British established 13 colonies in North America, but the southern colonies were the ones that introduced slavery, okay, African slavery. This is not to say that there were no slaves whatsoever moving in the upper colonies. I mean, there were, but their numbers were so almost insignificant that slavery is not going to play a key role in shaping the economic, let us just say, structures of the upper colonies, as it did in the South. I mean, in the South, slavery will become a central component of the entire economic system and how the colonies function. You know, the production of cash crops like tobacco and rice and indigo, for example, it's going to be critical for the British to implement this system of labor. Slavery is a system of labor, by the way, in order to extract those agricultural resources, okay? And it's going to also alter the way that the southern colonies are going to structure their societies. You know, slave societies tend to be very aristocratic and feudal. in which you have a land-owning elite at the top, the aristocrats, the slave owners owning most of the land, and the slaves. And they have, of course, an underclass, in this case, the slaves, pretty much doing all the work. And they also have another underclass, poor farmers, very limited in resources and land as well. And it was very difficult for people to move outside of their class. Okay, almost virtually impossible. Okay, so we're going to examine all of that. Another topic I chose in the colonial period is change. What is really causing change in the colonies? The religious colonies are going to be assessed in terms of the changes that they underwent and how they responded to change, how people began to entertain more and more materialistic concerns, in how the religious conservatives reacted against materialism, for example. We look at the Salem witch trials, for example, witch hunts and the like, again, very closely in that section. We look at revival movements like the First Great Awakening. People wanted to bring back religion in North America because it was being abandoned again. So we look at religious phenomena, whether it's persecution and witch hunts or religious revivals. We look at massive conversion as well. African slaves are going to be converted during this period of time in the 1740s, during the First Great Awakening. And there's also an effort to try to convert the Native Americans as well. Okay, so there was a concerted effort by several Protestant groups to try to convert the Native Americans to Christianity. Now, at the very end of the colonial period, we look at the revolution, the American Revolution, and we look at the causes of the revolution. Of course, those causes we know are rooted in British taxation without representation. It is true, but this course is also going to look at ideological factors as well, ideas. Okay, it is true that the colonists were very, very unhappy about the taxes, but they were also radicalized in many ways by new ideas written by European thinkers and philosophers concerning ideas about liberty, for example, representative government, democracy, and so on. And this gave the colonists perhaps a vision for a future free of British control, in which they were going to build a new nation based on those ideas of liberty and representative government and so on. Okay, so we look at that very closely at the end of the colonial period. Now, the final historical era that we're going to examine for this course is going to look at the early national period. Okay, let I just say from 1783, that is really when finally Britain acknowledged the independence of the United States, all the way to the Civil War and Reconstruction, okay, 1877. So here we're going to look at three topics as well. And the first one is going to look at the new republic, creating the American Republic. Okay, so we're going to look at how the founding fathers, in this case, went about creating the United States as we know it. They wrote two constitutions in order to create it. We're going to look at the first constitution, the Articles of Confederation, and how that worked. And then eventually how they did away with the Articles and created the Constitution of 1787. This is the constitution that we're functioning still today. And so we're looking at the formation of the country, how the government was supposed to be structured and how it was supposed to work, and so on, what ideas they used from philosophers in order to create it, and so on. We're going to look at all of that. Okay, and also we look at some of the challenges that the United States faced once the Republic was created, what kind of challenges the Republic faced. I mean, when countries are born, they face enormous challenges. Okay, and they're not just suddenly created and everybody agrees about what the country should be. Eventually people become divided and polarized about what is supposed to be the nation, in other words. And here, we're going to look at that as well. The formation of political parties, for example, the two-party system and the like, was an expression of that. And there were different ideologies, different viewpoints about the country, and we're going to pay attention very closely at that. And of course, there will be yet another confrontation with Britain. Again, the United States wanted to expand its economy. It wanted to grow economically by expanding trade. And that trade was interfered with by the growing wars in Europe, mainly fought between Britain and France. And that embroiled the United States into yet another conflict with the former mother country, Great Britain. There will be another war called the War of 1812. After we go over that, then we move into the eighth topic, and that is the Industrial Revolution. Again, this is the transformation of the American North. The northern part of the country enters the industrial age. Factories, for example, railroads, steel plants, and the like are developed. A growing middle class, an industrial capitalist system is on the rise based on wage labor and the like. We're going to look at all of those changes, how the lives of Americans were changing as a result of industrialization, and how Americans responded to that change. Okay, whenever there is radical change taking place in society, people tend to either adapt or react to that change. And so we're going to look at that. Okay. And of course, there's going to be another revival movement called the Second Great Awakening, and people turn to religion in order to find answers and comfort to the changes, to the radical transformations taking place in their daily lives. Okay. Last but not least, our course ends with the Civil War. And eventually, what we see is a divided country between an industrial north, in which people earn their living through wages, working in factories or in commercial enterprises, companies that are kind of related to the industrial world. And in the South, we have a very traditional society that is still trapped in the past, meaning that most people live in the countryside. We have a society divided between planters and slaves. The planters monopolize all political and economic power. And there are millions of slaves laboring, again, for this planter class, growing cotton. And you have, of course, also millions of poor farmers as well that have no means of getting out of that poverty. So there is really no economic ladder to climb in the South. And of course, those two systems became rivals in terms of each one of them trying to dominate Washington, D.C. Who was going to dominate national policy in this case? Okay. Are the planter class of the South going to dominate national policy and protect slavery? Or are the northern industrialists going to dominate national policy and trying to protect industry? And that led to, again, a rupture in the Union, and that precipitated the Civil War between the North and the South. Eventually, the South is going to lose, and we see the massive change taking place after the Civil War. Massive reforms, for example, ending slavery, freeing millions of slaves, granting citizenship to millions of former slaves, incorporating them into the country, and also granting them civil rights like the right to vote, for example. Okay, so we look at that process towards the end of this course. Now, another thing that I wanted to point out in regards to the content of this course is my style of teaching and my specialties as well, my specializations. Every professor teaches this course very differently. Even though we cover the same material, so to speak, you know, instructors, professors, and so on, you know, we do bring different specialties and strengths, areas of expertise into the classroom. So while some professors might almost exclusively focus on politics and look at political history, you know, what politicians are doing, what laws they're writing, elections, and the like, other scholars might pay attention more to economics, others to, you know, issues like culture and the like. What I've done in my classes is that I try to cover all the areas, make it multidisciplinary. In other words, you're going to get a little bit of everything in this course. It's not going to be exclusively about, let's say, politics. There will be some political, of course, history, but you're also going to learn about economic history. You're going to learn a lot about culture, religion. You're going to learn a lot about science and technology. And I will also incorporate issues regarding, for example, the environment, how nature also participates in history as well. You know, whenever there's change in nature, you know, there are droughts, for example, or catastrophes or calamities, human societies have to change and adapt. And so that causes change over time, you know, the intervention of nature. So again, so I will be talking about a host of different fields of inquiry: politics, economics, culture, religion, science, technology, nature. And also, we're going to be talking about people that rarely have been given a voice, you know, in history. You know, history is mostly written to narrate the deeds of great people, conquerors and kings and leaders and the like. But what about common people? You know, they also make history. They're also important. So again, in this class, we're also going to grant voice to those that we rarely hear from. Just common people, whether we're talking about, for example, farmers and, you know, workers, or we're talking about religious communities, women, minorities, like, for example, you know, African Americans, Native Americans, and the like. Again, so it's going to be very rich in that regard, in that it's not just going to be a history from the top down, just looking at, again, leaders and so on, as is that's all we need to learn about, but otherwise we're going to incorporate all society into the conversation. Okay, so it's multidisciplinary in that we look at multiple disciplines, and also is multi-cultural as well. We're looking at different cultures, different groups of people. And having said that, one last thing I want to mention here is that the way I teach my classes is that I always pay attention to the big picture. In other words, what is called the global perspective, meaning that although this is a U.S. history course, and of course, you know, we're going to be covering quite significantly issues related to U.S. history, we're going to be connecting the United States with other parts of the world, because the United States was not developing in total isolation from the rest of the world. There's plenty of interaction with the rest of the world. You know, let us just say the Europeans interacting with the Native Americans, and those are two worlds coming together, encountering one another and sometimes colliding, if you will. So we need to understand those two worlds as much as possible. You know, we mentioned the slave trade. Okay, so we need to look at Africa. Where is, again, the world from which the African societies are coming from? Okay, we look at the context, the background of Africa as well. So you'll be learning about world cultures and world civilizations while taking U.S. history. Okay, so again, that is my perspective. Again, to connect local, regional events with the larger picture. How those little pieces, again, those regions that we're studying, fit in the larger picture. Okay. how they influence one another, and so on. Okay, so this is in terms of content. Now, the mode of learning, how are you going to be learning all of this material that I just synthesized? In the last 25 minutes, I synthesized pretty much all of the topics, the areas of study that we're going to be covering in the entire course. How are you going to learn that? Okay, so the mode of learning, as I explained, is that I've recorded all of my lectures using this software, the one that I'm using right now. Okay, so you're able to see the instructor. You have also a visual aid. In other words, I'll present an outline for you to see, bullet points, keywords, for instance. There's a train of thought, in other words. Okay, we're going to follow. I present pictures and photographs and charts and so on for you to see. And your responsibility is to watch those video lectures very thoroughly as if you were in class. Okay, so those are the identical lectures I present in class. And of course, every now and then I'm incorporating new material as I read more and more, of course, new books and so on. I'm modifying my lectures. I'll be modifying actually my lectures in the next semester and so on. Okay, so but your responsibility is to watch the lecture and take notes as thoroughly as possible, as if you were in class, in other words, because the 3 exams given in this course are all going to be based on the lectures and nothing else. So you don't need to be concerned with anything else other than the lectures. Okay, that is your main responsibility. You might ask, okay, so where are the lectures? I said earlier, here under course content, there is a link titled Instructional Materials. You click on it and you'll find 2 folders. The upper folder, those are the actual lectures. Again, there'll be 9 folders. There are 9 themes or 9 topics, which means that my lectures are organized thematically. Okay, they're not organized randomly or chronologically, but rather there are 9 themes, key central themes for understanding U.S. history up to 1877. And each folder, meaning each theme, contains 3 video lectures that span for about an hour and 20 minutes each. Okay, an hour and 20 minutes. So you watch those lectures in this sequence, in this order. You start with the first folder, and then you watch session 1, 2, and 3, and then move into the second folder, and so on and so forth. Again, one by one. Okay, that is the idea. Okay, so it's very similar, if not identical, to a face-to-face class. This is, the virtual, pretty much, experience of that. Okay. Now, the second folder posted here under course content is called Lecture Outlines and Questions. You click on it, and you're going to find 9 files. Those are Word docs. And those Word docs are nothing other than the lecture outlines. So when I'm lecturing, as I said, you're going to see an outline. Okay, with keywords and all that. So I'm actually sharing those with you if you need them, in other words. Okay. At the end of each outline, you're going to find at the very bottom a series of questions. Those are study questions. In other words, those are the questions that appear on the exam. Those are for you to know what to expect regarding this topic. So, okay, so he lectured for 3 classes about Native Americans, but what is he going to ask about it? You're going to see the specific questions presented at the very end of the document, okay, for you to just review and study. Okay, so let us go back to the syllabus and look at the mode of learning. So as I said, there are 9 topics, 3 topics are covered for each historical period. Okay, the ones that I just explained in the course content. So every time we cover 3 topics, we have an exam. Okay, so we're going to have 3 exams. So every time we cover 3 topics, then we have the first exam, and then we move into the colonial period, cover the next round of topics, have the second exam over that material, and likewise, the final exam will cover the last 3 topics. So the final exam is not going to be comprehensive. It's not going to cover everything, in other words, okay? All right, so my lectures, last but not least, do not come from a single source. Okay, so that's why I don't use a book, because my lectures are a composite of a multiplicity of different sources. So books I've read over many, many years, going back to my college years very early on, all the way to the present. Articles I've read, documentaries, historical documentaries, and so on. Again, so it is really a mix that is literally impossible for me to assign a book that is going to guide you through the lectures. In other words, well, he's really lecturing based on this book, so I can either reinforce what I'm understanding from the lecture, or maybe just go through the book, and kind of understand, the entire conversation. So that's not the way I structure my lectures. So again, that's why I don't assign a book. Okay. So having said that, please be reminded that your main responsibility starting today is to start watching the lectures and take as many notes as possible, because the 3 exams for this course are going to be based exclusively on the material presented in those videos. Okay, there'll be 3 exams. Each exam consists of 25% of the final grade. Okay, it's really worth 25% of the final grade. Now you might say, what is the format of the exam? How the exams are going to be presented? How can I prepare for them? What kind of format will I expect? Okay, so let me start by saying, well, first, the exams are not going to be timed in the conventional sense that, okay, look, the first exam is October, what I just said, I believe it's October 17. I'm going to look in just a second. And in that day, you're going to have to log in and answer the exam, and you only have a couple of hours. And so, no, that's not the way we're going to conduct the exam. It's more like a writing assignment. Okay? So, it's not timed. It's really a writing assignment that you have plenty of time to work in. It's unlimited. Again, you have unlimited time, because you have from now until when the exam is due to complete it. And there will be absolutely no fill in the blank, no multiple choice or scantrons involved whatsoever. It is mainly an exam that consists of answering questions based on the lectures. It has 2 parts. Part 1, if we can just go, for example, to the first exam and see the instructions here. Okay, the exams are already posted there, so you can start working on them actually, starting today. So it's actually October 21st, I'm sorry. Okay, when the exam is due. So part 1 says for 70 points, choose one topic. So, if you actually do the math, you say, okay, so we cover 3 topics for this exam, but I'm choosing one for part 2. For part 1, I'm sorry. I can choose either the Native American discussion or European background, and just select one topic and answer all of the questions in that order. So you don't need an English composition kind of style essay, with topic paragraphs and arguments and conclusion. All you need to do is follow a question and answer format and answer those questions as fully as possible. as fully as possible. Okay? So write as if your audience has no clue, no idea what you're talking about, no idea about history or that subject matter at all. Okay? So the more you write, the more you explain, the more details you provide, the higher your points. So one of the problems I have in the past with students is that they assume that I know what they're talking about. So they don't explain. They just mention. Okay? If you're talking about Native American religions, and you just mention, oh, the Native Americans had a religion called animism, and then you move on. Like, wait a minute, you didn't define what animism is. It's the belief that everything has a spirit. They believe that nature and plants and animals and rocks and everything had a spirit, animating it. If you just mentioned, oh, they worshipped animals and they had several rituals for animal worship, and then move on, but never tell me the name, the rituals, how they were performed, and so on, and why, and so on. I just can't measure, your learning in this course, because I don't know if you actually watched, the lectures. If you're just mentioning very briefly and vaguely, those issues. So you have to elaborate and you have to really be very detailed. Okay, so just answer 1 for 70 points, and you have to write 5 full pages, double space for part 1. Part 2, the key themes involved selecting 3 themes from the 3rd topic on religion. So this topic, everybody has to watch. Everybody has to watch, because if you want to earn a grade above 70, okay, you need to watch this topic for 30 points. You select 3 themes and you discuss that theme as fully as possible. It's not just a definition. It's a theme. So it means you have to identify what it is, you have to describe and fully explain. Okay? So you have to write, a long paragraph for each one of those themes. You can select whichever you want, but you have to be very, very thorough and very elaborate as well, okay, for 30 points. All of that is saved in a Word file or PDF, and you upload it by the due date, which is October 21st. Okay, on the upload tab right here, it says submit work. This is where you're going to be submitting all coursework. Again, the first, second, final exam, the report. I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes, and the extra credits as well. Okay, everything is submitted here using either Word or PDF, because no other application is going to open. Okay, I've tried it, so it's only Word or PDF. Now, I must also warn you of several, things that students in the past, some, not a lot, but some students have done, and that really have caused their grades to tank significantly. They have failed the exams, and that is, for the exams, please avoid a couple of things, at all costs. One is using outside sources. So the catch is, okay, you have all this time to do the exam. It's a writing assignment, actually. Well, that's what it is. But do not use any outside source, no matter what it is, even your own personal knowledge. Okay? You might say, well, because I know history, so I decided to answer all of those questions based upon my own knowledge. Well, yeah, so but you're not taking this class then. Because, when you're taking a class, you're presented with new information. It's a new analysis, new content, and you have to take the course. So you just take the course, but don't go over the material, because you are bringing that knowledge from somewhere else. However accurate that is, well, you're not taking this course, so you're not going to pass it. Okay, you are taking now this course right here. Okay, so I need to make sure that you're reviewing the material I'm giving to you. Okay, so avoid using encyclopedias, web pages, books, anything coming from the outside. Just concerned with the lectures. And number 2, avoid using transcriptions. Some students decide to transcribe my notes. They use software. Now you can use different applications to actually transcribe my voice and put it into writing and then just present that to me. They fail too, because what that is actually telling me is that you didn't actually review the material. It was a software. It's a computer. Okay, a computer mechanically did this, and then you're giving me my transcriptions. Okay, so in both cases, that results in disqualification and failing grade. Okay, so try to avoid doing work twice. Just do it once and do it right. Okay, the right way is passing and excelling this class by watching the lectures and using your own creativity, using your own expression, your writing skills, writing those answers and so on. Writing the answers to those questions and terms and so on, the themes. Okay? All right, so let us go to the last portion of the syllabus. Now that we discussed the exams, also I want to point out that there will be opportunities for extra credit assignments. If you decide that you want to increase your grade, boost it, there are 3 extra credit assignments. Everybody's entitled to do those. Those are not mandatory. Those are optional. Only if you want to add 10 points to each exam, you can do those extra credit assignments. They're posted right here under course content. There's a link titled course assignments, and that link gives you the instructions for all the course assignments: first, second, final exam, study questions, and the extra credit assignments. Okay, all the assignments are here, but only the extra credit assignments are optional. They're not mandatory. Okay, I repeat, they're not optional. Okay, all right. So the course assignment, again, we're really moving towards the end again of this presentation. There's going to be one course assignment based on the textbook that I introduced to you at the beginning of this video presentation. Again, that is the course requirement. This is the textbook, Reading American Horizons, the 4th edition, and I've selected 10 documents for you to read. And your responsibility is to read those documents carefully and answer a series of questions based on the content. The syllabus here presents you the instructions very carefully, how to do it, the format, for example, cover page, the length, it has to be page numbered, for instance. You have to follow a question and answer format, and also you have to indicate which document you're working on. So again, this is the format. You start with the cover page with all your student information and so on, title of the work and so on, and then when you start, you write at the very top the name of the document, like Swimmer as Told to James Mooney, Origins of Disease and Medicine. Okay, that's the title on top of the page, and then write the questions. Okay, you write the question and then the answer, the question and the answer. When you move into the second document, you also write the title on top of the page. Okay, you write the title as well. Okay, you write it and then you follow the same procedure one by one. Okay, it tells you which chapter it is, the page number where you find the actual, let me see. Okay, right here. Chapter number, it tells you the page number as well, the title, and the questions that must be addressed. Okay, so there are 10 documents. So ideally, what I'm expecting is that you write one full page per document. So if there are 2 or 3 questions per document, just try to answer them by filling one full page double space, and then you move into another page, writing the title of the document, question and answer, a whole page, and then go in the same, again, using the same format for each one of those for those documents. Okay. All right. So now, having said that, at the end of the day, you'll end up with 10 pages in length. Okay. And it must be uploaded by December 6th. And it's 25% of your final grade. Okay. That's the only course assignment for this course that is due at the end of the semester. So the grading. There are 4 main grades for this course. First, second, final exam, and study questions report, each worth 25%. Now, in this, let us just say, grade distribution and calculation, also consider that we're going to have extra credit assignments. They're not mandatory, but again, you also have the opportunity to increase your grade. And there's another thing that I also take into account when I'm grading at the end of the semester, and that is effort and progress. Meaning that when I'm calculating your grades at the end, I look at each individual name, the student and their grades, and I see whether the student was progressing or staying in the same level. So you were progressing, moving from a 75 to an 84 to a 93 in each one of the exams, and then you submitted the report, an extra credit assignment, for example, and you ended up with, let us say, an 88.75. Well, you were progressing. And also you submitted, that's an effort. You submitted an extra credit assignment. So that has to be rewarded as well. I mean, this is something that has to be taken into account. That's what I mean. So in those special circumstances where I see progress and effort, meaning that there was an effort to improve, submitting an extra credit assignment and so on, if you are borderline, just falling short maybe a point or point and a half from reaching the next letter grade, I can give you the final push. But I have to see those two things combined, progress and effort. Okay. At the end of this document, we find important calendar dates. It tells you when is the last day to drop or withdraw, which is November 21st. Thanksgiving holiday, November 28th. Final exams is the week from the 9th to the 13th and so on. And the grades are due December 15th. Okay. So it tells you more or less week by week what we're going to be covering, so to speak. There's a 12-week course, and it gives you more or less, which lectures to be watching along the way. Like the first week, I need to be watching the Native Americans. In the second week, I watch the Native Americans and the European background, and so on. It just tells you, to keep a steady pace and rhythm. It tells you which lectures you're guided to be watching, in other words, okay, along the way. It tells you when the first exam is due, October 21st. The second is November 18th. It tells you when the study questions report is due, December 6th. And the final exam is due December 13th, okay? All right, so this is all I have for you. I hope that this video presentation was helpful. If for some reason you have a question or comment, a concern regarding any issue, any section of the Blackboard page, or maybe some clarification regarding assignments, exams, and so on, from this presentation, please let me know. Write me an email and I will respond immediately. Okay? Once again, my name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I will be your instructor for this class this semester. And I hope you really enjoy the content of this course and really learn more about U.S. history. Okay? I'll see you then in the next announcement once this video is posted. Thank you.